I am the EdMaps data coordinator, and I've been in this position for about 10 years now. Come on. So first I'll be talking about data uploads. This is how data enters the database, which populates the website. So it comes from our website forms as well as forms embedded on our partners pages. I'll be talking very briefly about data coming from smartphone apps. I'll spend a little more time on data coming from bulk. A lot of our partners have been taking data for years, and this is how they'll send us either old data or data that they have to collect in their own systems. And I'll briefly touch on the API as well. So just to give you an idea of how data enters our system, I said it comes from web, comes from smartphone apps, API, and bulk data. What happens after that? So then it goes to our verifiers. Our verification network is made up of a lot of local and regional partners that have an interest in what's going on in their area and for the species they're interested in. So our system first looks at, is this a regulatory species or not? If it's a regulatory species, it goes to our state and federal agency partners. If it's a non-regulatory species, then it goes to the verifiers based on what they've signed up to receive or what we've talked to them and signed them up for them to receive. And this looks at where it's reported, what type of species it is it part of a particular project, and in some cases, would this be the first report in a particular area or not? Then the verifiers make their decision. They look at the information provided, maybe they gather more information, and they use this information available to decide what happens with those particular records. So broadly speaking, they can approve it. So in some level of correctness, it's an accurate record. They can elect to change the species. And so say someone reports squirrel snapweed and Jerry looks at it and says, no, that's spotted knapweed. He can update that record to the appropriate species. So it shows up on the right maps and in the right downloads. They can mark it negative. So if someone's doing a survey for Asian longhorn beetle, someone finds a longhorn beetle, the verifier can look at it and say, no, that's a native one, but I want to keep that as a negative record. So you looked for it and did not find it. And then they can also reject it. So they looked at it, they said, oh, it's not what they reported. There's no value in keeping it as a negative record, or maybe it's a test record, something like that. They can elect to delete the record, or they can elect to mark it as unable to be confirmed. So there's not enough information. At any of these decisions that are made, a user or another verifier can contest this record. A user could send us an email right now and say, hey, I don't think this is accurate. We will be adding a flag option on individual records as well. So you can literally just press a button and it lets us know. Or another verifier can contest the record, similar to how Jerry showed you earlier with the EdMaps Pro. Once a record is not rejected, the system looks at, was it made publicly available or not? And a record that's not publicly available can later become publicly available. This is the entire record itself. Once it's made publicly available, it goes out through our data feeds, our user alerts, and anybody can sign up for a user alert so they know what's going on in their area. And value-added tools. So our value-added tools are our distribution maps, any custom maps that exist, as well as some graphs. The data feeds include data going out via API, going out through our data downloads, through our recent reports feed, and also going out to specific data partners that we have data sharing agreement with on an automatic or very regular basis. So the data downloads includes data coming out through basically 3 different ways. Species, this will include data coming from the maps, data being requested through our advanced query tool, and custom queries that exist. Now, any which way that data comes out, it's used in a huge variety of ways. This includes informing policy, developing models. In research, we work with a lot of researchers who use the data. People view this as a way to share data if they need to do so. People can use us as a way to say they've published specifically their data. A lot of people use us, especially the maps, for education and outreach materials, and also to inform invasive species lists, either in creation or in revision. And there is one other way data comes in. So we do get data that we would consider pre-verified or from expert sources. This would include data from, say, herbaria, museums, from literally the expert in a field. This goes in as pre-verified Now that data, as you can see by it having a purple star, is also able to be contested. So we can have this checks system in place. So data comes in from the majority of our users individually by two different ways. So we get individual records coming from our apps, and the 4 apps you see on the screen are our primary applications we're going to be using going forward or promoting going forward. And we'll come back around later in the discussion section about some apps you may already be using that still exist. We also get data from our website. We actually get a lot of data still submitted via our website. We're not getting overrun with data from our apps. So there's a lot more fields you see on this form. This is only a portion of the website form on the right. And so you get to see a lot more data entry options than exist in the apps. And that for that reason is because nobody really wants to stand in a field in 100-degree weather being attacked by mosquitoes and ticks, while you're trying to fill out life stages and so forth. And then bulk data. So this is a lot of what I end up doing. You reach the bulk data uploader by being logged in, going to the My EdMaps tab, and there's a bulk data option available. And it's really just a file uploader. You're sending files for me to evaluate and work with you on getting interpreted and uploaded into the database. The image on the right is our upload questionnaire. So we've found that I was asking a lot of questions from most of our contributors. So this allows some of those questions to be asked kind of upfront. And so I am interpreting the data correctly. And it also serves as a check to make sure that everything you're uploading is complete. So you're uploading as most of the complete amount of data as possible to make sure it's usable. And we mentioned API in the beginning. So API right now we're getting data from somewhere else. And right now, the API is mainly pulling from iNaturalist. So we are getting iNaturalist data. We're only pulling research grade. We're pulling it regularly, but it's not going straight into EdMaps. So it enters what we're calling the triage system. So anyone who's a state or national level verifier for anything can go into the triage system and look at these records. It's a very coarse level of information provided. As you can see on the left, this is the table they look at. And verifiers can look at the information provided there to evaluate if they want those records to be individually reviewed in the verifier queue. So that's 2 verifiers under the manage icon heading. To bulk verify the record, so if it's something that's widespread, not really managed or tracked, maybe it's really easy to identify, they might decide to go ahead and bulk verify this because in iNaturalist, it's already reached research grade. Or they can elect to ignore. So we do get some data that is native to one area of the country and invasive in another. And so an individual state verifier can decide if they want what would to them be native data in the database or not. We leave that up to the verifiers. And on the left image, there are some links above that search bar that helps our verifiers to know what this whole system is and some cheat sheets and other information. And next, I'm going to move on to query tools. So this is kind of looking at the data in EdMaps and starting to get the data out. The most basic query tool we have is our distribution maps. This is literally saying, I want to see the data you have for a single species, either on a state-based map, a county-based map, a point map, or in a list. So this is what it looks like. So on the left, you're seeing a county-based map, or in the case of Canada, county equivalents. We did add Canada very recently to our county level maps. This was very exciting. So this shows you at least one positive or treated record has been reported in each of these county or county equivalents. What you're seeing there is just the presence map. It was found there. We also have record density maps, so it tells you how many records have been reported in those counties. We have a literature versus observation map. It's just what type of data is populating those counties. Either it comes from literature or actual observations. And then for certain plant species, we have future range and future certainty maps. And those will be gone over a little bit later in Joe's presentation. And on the right shows what a point level map looks like. So this map is of a plant. And so the icons you see for the different colors tell you if this was a negative report, so they looked for it and did not find it, A positive report, they found it, treated, they found it, and at that time they did some sort of control measure, or eradicated. So that population they managed is now determined to be eradicated. And eradicated is, there's different people have different opinions on what constitutes eradicated. So there's not a ton of data in our database because of those reasons. And in the top right corner above the map area, you'll see there are CSV, KML, and shapefile icons. And that's for downloading the data. And I'll get to that in a little bit. Under the tools and training section, there's also a link called invasive species status by state. So if you click that link and choose your state, this is what you see. And as you can see on this image, you can change your state just from right here if you want to view different states rapid fire. But this tells you what's kind of going on at a broad level in your state. What types of species are you seeing? How many records exist for these species in your state? How widespread are the different species? So how many counties have records of these? And also, how many invasive species are in these counties? So you get kind of a general idea of what's going on in your state and in certain counties as well. And then under the My EdMaps section, again, you have to be logged in to see this. You get a few different types of dashboards. When you just click on My EdMaps and you're logged in, you see your dashboard or My dashboard. And this is only showing reviewed data. So this is what you would expect other people to be able to see. So it shows a map of where you've reported recently. And this is a year time span. It's 365 days. You see where you've recently reported, and again, reviewed records, some basic numbers on what you're kind of reporting, where you're reporting. You get to see what subjects you're reporting a lot of or little of, what types of species you're reporting. And you can also see your statistics, which is something we carried over from the previous iteration, and your recent reports. And these are just your records right here. If you click on dashboard on the left, you can also see the EdMaps dashboard. This is all the reviewed data in EdMaps. So this has a number of filtering options at the top. And once you've figured out what you kind of want to see, then you can get the results for that. So this is showing just all the data in EdMaps for a year, not including bulk data. And I'm seeing how many reports are showing up for different counties on our maps. I'm seeing basic statistics on how many people are reporting, how many subjects, and so forth. I'm also seeing, again, top reported species. Another graph that wasn't on my EdMaps is top reporters, because there would only be one reporter for top reporters on my dashboard. So you can see who's reporting a lot. You can see the top eradicated and treated species, as well as observed, treated, eradicated species, what is kind of coming in as a proportion of data. And you can also see where data is coming in from. So do you want to know if in your state a lot of people are reporting by web or by smartphone? You can have that information. And then finally, this is the last of the graphs here and last of the information. You can see where data is coming from, and including revisits. You can spend a lot of time just exploring around the EdMaps dashboard to see kind of where data is coming from. It's a lot of fun. And then finally, this is something we launched yesterday. So this is hot off the press. You can, if you are a verifier, if you're an EdMaps verifier, you can see statistics on what you've verified, what you've reviewed. So you can see a map of where the records are coming from that you're reviewing, how many records you've reviewed, what types of species you're reviewing for, where the data is coming in from, a bar chart of the counties you're verifying for, and also you can see your recently reviewed reports. These are the records you've recently reviewed, so you can look at them again if you want to. So now we're going to move on to downloading data. So I'm going to talk about the main 3 ways data is downloaded from EdMaps. This is including our species maps, our advanced query tools, and My EdMaps. So I showed you a species map earlier, and I mentioned in the top right corner there were links for CSV, KML, and shape. When you click one of those links, a pop-up comes up that asks you, do you actually want to download all of the species data that we have in EdMaps? A lot of people actually don't. So if you only want a subset of this species, you would click here, which is the first option, and that takes you to the advanced query tools. There are some people who are doing single species studies or want to manipulate the data in some way to analyze it. So they want all of the data in our database for that particular species. So we do have that as an option. But most people we found were downloading all of the data for the species when they really only needed a very small portion of it. So I'm going to take you to the advanced query tools. When you click on tools and training and then advanced query tools, this is the form you are presented with. You get to add a lot of different parameters to get to a data set that is as close to what you're looking for as possible. This includes date ranges, reporters, geographic areas. If you only want positive or treated data, that way you don't have any negative or eradicated data, and so forth. Once you're satisfied with your parameters, then you would click submit, and you'd end up on a page that looks like this. This is the data that I requested, that I wanted to see. And then again, in the top right corner, I have my CSV KML shapefile options. When I select one of those, I'll get a pop-up that says that I'll be emailed with a link when the results are compiled. And finally, downloads. So if you go to My EdMaps and on the left-hand side, downloads, this is the screen you're presented with. In the top left link, download my reports. This would be all of my data, including the unreviewed data. The rest of those links you're seeing are projects I'm part of. So if you're part of a specific project, and most people are not, there are some projects we work with, but I just want to, don't be surprised if all you have is download my reports. So, but if you are part of a particular project, this is your opportunity to download all of the data from that project at one time. And then below those links are my requests. So these are the requests I've made over the years. And you're seeing on the right-hand side under file, it says file expired. These files exist for 30 days for availability. So you can download the data anytime within 30 days and access it. And finally, I want to talk about quality management. That's the quality assurance and quality control I mentioned at the very beginning. Quality assurance is making sure that the data comes in our database as accurate as possible. And quality control is fixing things that come up after it's entered our database. So under quality assurance, we have cleaning and formatting bulk data prior to entry. That's me. Ensuring the data entry forms are accurate. That's something I work on with our programmers. And the record review process, which is where our verifier network comes into play. Quality control is getting notified when errors occur, fixing polygons that come in that are invalid, contesting reviewed records. Again, that can be a user, anyone who's using EdMaps, as well as the verifiers, and updating species names. So records do occasionally need updating when species names change. So I'm going to start with bulk data, and I'm going to have several images here to show you just kind of what I see as the EdMaps data coordinator. I see a fair amount of incomplete file packets. Basically, there are some people out there who are not trained or experienced in shape files and sharing them. So they might not know to share everything that's involved with a shapefile. So sometimes we have to work with people on making sure all of the data gets to us. And it isn't just where they only share the .shp. They might forget to share or not be able to share certain other parts of the data because they may not have them or they may not exist. And so the solution I came up with was basically to tell anyone that anything with the same file name, send me. So this gives me as much of a file grouping as possible. And then that has helped out a lot. We also have issues with what I kind of call multiple conversions. So we have worked with people who take data and map it fast, convert it to KMZs, which are viewable in Google Earth, and then I need to convert it to a shape file to use it. And this is what it looks like in a KML in Google Earth. However, this is what it sometimes ends up looking like in ArcGIS, and this is unusable. So we do work with people on making sure that the data gets to us in as original a form as possible. I also work a lot with individuals on making sure that the information they provide is complete and clear. So in this case, I was submitted data that just in some cases said teasel. There are many species of teasel. So I have to work with them on figuring out which species of teasel. We also have had many conversations about what does zero mean. There are some programs, including ArcGIS, that defaults a zero when a null is more appropriate. So I work with them on, does zero mean it was not found, or does zero mean you didn't enter that data? And as you can probably tell, this is the entirety of that data there, and there's no dates. So I work with people on making sure that we have this minimum required information. Some other things I run into that's a little bit unusual, but does happen multiple times a year, is sharing data between different geographic projections. So in this case, someone shared data with me that was in UTMs, when our database is in decimal degrees, specifically WGS 84. However, UTMs are different from decimal degrees in that UTMs are reused by zone. So this particular data set was missing the zone, so I didn't know where to put it in the world. Additionally, I sometimes get data where it's missing a unit. So area, but what type of area? Is it a square foot? Is it an acre? Those are two very different areas. So I work with people on that as well. I get a fair amount of data that's coded. So some people use USDA plants codes or other types of codes for quickly noting what species are. So in this case, I had to work with the contributors on what does this field mean? And even after working with them, I still occasionally would have questions about, okay, you know, in this one case, CT meant Canada thistle, but this other case, it meant camel thorn. Also, what do these numbers mean? Because they in fact did end up meaning something. And then on the right here, this is another data set I received where, yes, we have a full species name, we don't have a date, but also what are these park codes? Are they a national, state, city, county, municipality, regional, provincial, you know, you can go on. I don't know where these parks are. And also some of these parks may cross multiple boundaries, county or county equivalent boundaries. Duplicate data is an issue on multiple fronts. So I received this file and it had 3 records in it. But then I also received this file, which also had 3 records in it. And as it turned out, they were the same data. This data was submitted to me more than once. So I work with the reporter on which data file I should look at. We also get situations where people contribute polygons as well as centroids of points. So again, I work with them on which would be more appropriate for their use. We really try to encourage polygons because that gives a better idea of what the infestation is. One other way we get duplicate data is data being contributed to multiple databases. We do harvest or share data with multiple other databases, including a USGS and some other, you know, smaller and larger databases. So if you're sharing data with USGS, we will get it eventually. And it's best to talk with us before, say, you're a park ranger, you're submitting data to us for your park, but you're also submitting it up to the larger national database for the parks. And then there's the issue of too much data. So this is a portion of some data I received from one file. And as you can see, there are a lot of zeros. So we work together with the contributors to talk with them about, okay, well, what are the required fields? What are the fields that actually have data and are important? We also get instances where data is submitted that isn't actually data. It's recording of other things, management activities, or just structures. So again, working with the contributors on, hey, can I remove this? Is this important for some reason? Is this actually representing something else? Which does happen sometimes. And then also submitting unusable shapes. So on the left, I have obviously received data like this. These are tracks or auto logger points. So this is a problem because it tends to artificially inflate abundance. If someone was submitting this on, you know, and it was a record accounting of Japanese stilt grass, it looks like they're literally submitting every single leaf of the grass that's out there, when it would be more appropriate to submit these as polygons or lines. And then on the right, we received data. And once I visualized it, I realized that these are very close to centroids, if not actual centroids. So in talking with the contributor, they in fact did send us centroids because they thought that it would be better to submit points rather than just saying, I found it somewhere in the county. False centroids have caused problems for people in different situations, so we do not use false centroids as much as possible. We also run into occasionally where text-based locality does not match where the point is ending up. So in this case, we were submitted data and they said the data was occurring in Burundi, when in fact the points were putting it in a completely different country. In fact, there was a whole country in the middle between these two. So in talking with the reporter, we found out that it was an error on the part of the country, but it can as easily be an error on the part of the latitude or longitude being entered. So we can't just assume one or the other is correct. So just some basic ideas of bulk data best practices. Submit required data. We require who, what, where, and when. So just a basic idea. That's the very minimum required. Measurements, in fact, have units. Make sure that you're not assuming we know what they are. Include any metadata or survey protocol you have. That is extremely helpful. And then also ask any questions. I answer a lot of questions. So and if I'm not answering them, I'm asking them myself. So be sure to ask questions as you can. And then, so from the website's quality assurance that we do, this is what the website form looks like. And this is similar, again, to the app. It's a little more comprehensive. One thing we do is do a lot with controlled vocabulary. So in this case, what we're doing is limiting the options available, such as drop-downs, check boxes, and radio buttons for selectors. This really helps to standardize that type of data. The other thing we do is controlling the data type itself. So in a place where you're expecting a number, only a number can be added. Our dates are all formatted the same way, things like that. This helps not just us, but anybody who comes to reuse the data later. It's as standardized as possible. And this is the same way in the apps. And finally, in the quality assurance, this is what the verifier's review record form looks like. The most important fields, in my opinion, are the verification method and the identification credibility. So verification method, how did they come to their decision? Photographs, verifier expertise, reporter expertise, and so forth. And identification credibility is where they say, is it accurate? Is it, I'm unable to confirm, I need to change the subject, and so forth. So our verifiers are extremely important in the EDMAP system. And as I put a notification at the top, we are always looking for more EDMAPS verifiers. So be sure to email me if you are interested in learning more about being a verifier. And then finally, in quality control, data that comes in with certain parameters that we've decided to flag, we get an email for on a daily basis. So this tells me something was submitted as a synonym, there are discrepancies in the data provided, or there's a bad shape or an invalid shape. So this is the email I get. And just to give you an idea, so this is where I go to fix bad shapes, invalid shapes. So I have a table I can look at. I can click on the fix button, and this is sometimes what I see. So this is an invalid shape, and through our end, we can fix some of these bad shapes. And the reporter is notified when a shape is fixed. Contesting reviews was brought up a couple of times, and so I just wanted to briefly talk about that. This form is something that the verifiers can see, and at the bottom they can click contest review. So if they see something that doesn't look quite right or that needs to be reevaluated, any verifier can test a review they're basically allowed to review for that fits their parameters. Any user can see a record and send a link to us for that record and say, I don't think this is right. There's some kind of misinformation about this. And we will put that back in the review queue. Again, we do want to add a flag option on the individual records so that an email isn't required in the future. And then I mentioned updating records. So this record was released, and it was unfortunately released as an unknown plant, which means it's not going to appear on any maps. It's not going to appear in queries because, except for just, I'm wondering what, I want to see all the plants. So I've been working with the verifier on how we can get this to at least a genus level. so that these records will be more useful. So this is another thing that I see. So if you have any more information on the EdMaps website, you can go to the About section. It goes over our history. We have a frequently asked questions page and more information about why invasive species are important. We have a species info section. So you can go there, click on a species and see identification information, maps, images, lists, and so forth. We don't have something for every species, but we do have a lot filled out. And then finally, our tools and training page. So a lot of the things we've talked about today, we have training materials on that tools and training page. We have an EdMaps app walkthrough. We have an EdMaps website walkthrough. We have an EdMaps Pro walkthrough. We even have a walkthrough on how to verify a record. So if you are wondering how that process works, you can see that. And then finally, one other thing I wanted to mention, we have a report verifier lookup. So if you want to know who's going to review the records that you submit, you can go to that tool and look up who will be doing that.